Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Swedish heavyweight Otto Wallin will take on Lucas Browne on March 28th in Las Vegas on a Showtime card that will be headlined by Lewis Neri. So Browne and Wallin is the co-main event. This was a fight that was tabbed a month ago as likely to happen, and now it's confirmed. So what I'll do first is get to the reaction from the fighters themselves, and then on to a few thoughts about this matchup. So we'll start with Sweden's Otto Wallin first.
So my next fight is finally announced. I'm gonna fight Lucas Big Daddy Browne from Australia in Las Vegas, March 28th. It's gonna be live on Showtime. Hopefully live on Swedish and international TV as well. We're working on that. Big Daddy, he's a veteran. He has 25 knockouts in 31 fights, so he's a dangerous guy. He's been world champion, but I feel like I'm younger, faster, I'm better. And I think that's going to make the difference and make me the winner on March 28th. But now, training is picking up. I'm going to be very serious, start sparring. So I'll be more than ready when March 28th comes.
So moving on to Lucas Browne, he's got a couple of posts of his own on social media, but keeping his cards close to his chest. So this first one here, which confirms the fight, he says, March 28th, I will make my USA debut in fighting Otto Wallin in Las Vegas. And then the second post, which is reposting part of a media headline, he actually just ats a whole bunch of people, which is his sponsors, presumably. But what I wanted to touch on here is one of the questions he was asked, well, what about Price? ? And Browne responds, there are more fighters in the world than Price or the UK, mate. ? Times 4. But the person there who asked that question is right to ask it, because Lucas Browne had heavily signalled he was going to be returning to the UK. And because originally, a couple of months ago, he was meant to be having an all-Australian affair against Dempsey McKean. He even signed his end of the deal, but then pulls out no real explanation as to why, except to say didn't want to fight in Australia again. He was targeting the UK most likely, but he was open to offers in the United States as well. And David Price was a guy that he mentioned who he wanted to fight, and there had previously been some talks about a potential fight for June, and he wanted to resurrect that. He hadn't heard anything in a while, but he was hoping to fight David Price. So the person asking about the UK and Price, well, it's a fair question, because Browne had certainly signalled that that was going to happen. So his response to them with the whole question marks, I mean, there's a reason that the question was being asked. And you can't blame Lucas Browne for taking this Wallin fight in the United States, because simply put, it will be the most money on offer. That's why he would have taken it. He's made no secret in recent months that he's got a couple of years left in boxing, and he wants to make as much money as possible. He's 40 years old, a couple of losses on the record, and he wants to cash in while he can in his time in the sport. And this is why this fight would have got over the line. And I have no doubt that Browne would like to fight in the UK. He'd still fight David Price, even if he loses to Wallin, but Wallin is next on the hit list. But in terms of this fight, Browne is the opponent here. He's being brought in as the guy to make Otto Wallin, an up-and-coming heavyweight, look good. So Otto Wallin, he's currently 20-1. His best win on his record to date is a win in 2018 against Adrian Granat, but most known by a lot of fans for his fight against Tyson Fury, where he gave a really good account of himself. He actually cut Fury open, a couple of nasty-looking cuts, and Fury was sort of on a knife edge on whether the doctor may stop that fight, but ultimately Fury battled through and got a decision against Wallin in, August or September 2019. But Wallin did actually do a good job in there. He was working Fury to the body early, and he even rocked him in the 12th round. So it wasn't one-way traffic like the Fury and Schwartz fight. And I think for a lot of fans who didn't know Otto Wallin before that, he came better than advertised in this fight, because clearly they've been looking for bigger and better fights for Otto Wallin after that last one against Tyson Fury. His promoter, Dimitri Salita, declared him having reached elite heavyweight status. But given he's got no real notable wins beyond Adrian Granat, and that was sort of, fringe level, contender level win, he needs to actually get a couple of names on his record. So bringing in a guy like Browne, who in my view is shot to pieces now. He's 40 years old. He's looked terrible in some of his recent fights, but he's got name recognition in the heavyweight division. Obviously, there was the WBA title that he held briefly back in 2016 with the win over Ruslan Chagayev. But this is why Wallin is fighting him. Obviously, other options haven't panned out. He was in the mix for a potential fight with Dillian Whyte, came to nothing. They want to build him into much bigger and better fights, and Browne is just a stepping stone to do that. And I do think that Otto Wallin is going to beat him. He said he was, better, bigger, faster, etc. And I do think he's all of those things. He's a much fresher than Lucas Browne, who I do think will be stopped again in this fight. Otto Wallin, not necessarily a massive puncher, but he's actually a sneaky good body puncher. And Browne has shown some vulnerability in the past year or so to that. Obviously, Dave Allen stopped him with a body shot. I think that Otto Wallin will break him down over a number of rounds. He will be careful while Browne is actually fresh, but I do think that Otto Wallin in the second half of the fight, and I'm presuming this is a 10-rounder, he probably gets a stoppage, I would say between rounds sort of 6 and 8, something like that. I do think that Lucas Browne is going to rack up another loss here. But Browne himself has been diligently training in the gym. He's posting, a zillion training clips, and the stuff that's running in the background is just from a couple of days ago. I've got so much Lucas Browne footage, it's not funny. Whereas other heavyweights, including Otto Wallin, they don't really post too much. But Browne is one of the most active heavyweights, and when he's been in the gym and what he's been doing, because he posts so often, and he has been keeping in better shape since his loss to Dillian Whyte, where he was clearly out of shape and didn't give it his all. Since then, he's had another loss to Dave Allen, and he's looked a bit shaky in a couple of other fights. But ultimately for me, this fight comes down to Dimitri Salita, Wallin's promoter, is trying to get Wallin in the conversation again, and he will declare Otto Wallin a top 10 heavyweight again if he beats Lucas Browne. And they'll say, look, there was a former world champion now on his resume, yada yada yada. But this is a stepping stone for Wallin to a much bigger and better fight. And given his best win is the Granat win from a couple of years ago, he needs to start getting a few decent names on the resume if he really wants people to believe that he is a top heavyweight. At the moment, I believe he's somewhere around top 30, but he's got to fight some guys and get some wins on the resume to justify coming up higher in the heavyweight division, at least in fans' minds about where his true position is. Because on the strength of the Fury fight alone, I don't believe we can just say he's a top heavyweight. He's a good heavyweight, but he's got to do more. And this Browne fight is an opportunity to do so. But what do you make of it all? Do you give Lucas Browne a shot in this fight? There are some ardent fans that believe Browne has still got something left. How about you? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.